Kia ora koutou. Welcome to the Healthy Families NZ Systems Change in Action webinar, and it's great to have you join us this morning. Today we've got Jacqui Yip from our Healthy Families South Auckland, the Southern Initiative, presenting on collective responsibility and sharing their learnings and demonstrating how they embed systems change. So I'll open the webinar today with a karakia, and then I'll hand over to Jacqui to launch into her presentation. Whakatakateho ki te uru, whakatakateho ki te taonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā tara tara ki tai, e hiaki ana, te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hohu, tihei, mauri ora. Thank you, Jacqui. You can begin your presentation when you're ready.
Cool. Kia ora, Lucy. Thank you. And kia ora e te whana, ka hui mai nei tēnei rā. Yeah, thank you so much for having me talk today. Just going to quickly share my screen and we'll get into it. So yeah, thanks again for having me on today to talk about our Healthy Families South Auckland team at the Southern Initiative and our learnings from our practitioner-centred approach to collective responsibility and action. Before I get into the session, I'd just like to do a quick intro of myself. Ko oaraka te maungo te rune taku nāko. Puhunui te awa e mahi nei aku mā harahara. No Hong Kong aho, e mihi ana ki ngā tohu o nehi o Tāmaki Makaurau e noho nei o, ko Jacqui Yip, tuku ingoa. So today we are going to do very much more of a whistle stop tour, to be honest. It's of our approach and of our work. I'm going to do a quick overview of our team and kaupapa, and then deep dive into our practitioner-centred approach to collective action. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about why we have decided to take this approach, and then how we are doing it through some case studies of a range of different collective action and responsibility projects that we are involved in. I will wrap up with some key learnings from doing this approach, and then hopefully have some time for whakaaro and patai at the end. So just starting with an overview of Healthy Families South Auckland, we are a unique team in the National Programme of Healthy Families New Zealand, in that we are one contract held by two individual organisations. So we have our own separate teams and ways of working. So today I am talking about our team based at the Southern Initiative, where we are located amongst the bigger organisation of Auckland Council. Our other partner is the Course Collective, and they are a Pacifica social change agency. I'd just like to take this moment to acknowledge the very recent passing of our former colleague, Mason Nafika, who was Kai Arahi Māori at the Course Collective. I'm sure many of you will know of Mason's dedication and passion to supporting the hauora of whānau Māori, with a special focus on food and nutrition. Kua hinga te tōtara I te wao nui a tāne. Rest well, Mason, and thank you. Moving into our team kaupapa, we work in the kaupapa of systems change, where we do consider and act on a whole system to achieve the well-being outcomes for our whānau and the community. So we have based our approach looking at the 6 conditions of systems change as the main focus of our work. So there are many ways to do systems change, and for our team, we have been working towards a practitioner-centred approach to collective action. Why have we chosen this approach? Many reasons, but for today, I will focus on the 3 main ones. So the first one is that this approach had really great potential impact relative to the size of our team. So we're actually a rather small team. This is us last, I think, 2 Fridays ago at the farewell for our matua, George Makapatama, who has left us for better shores, well, new shores, different shores in MIT. And so as a small team of 4 now, we saw that supporting collective action was a better way of really maximizing our collective time and capacity. The second reason is that we have built up a lot of learnings and insights on how to address systems change in our previous phases of being Healthy Families South Auckland TSI, and we're wanting to really elevate and amplify them now. So just as a quick overview, phase 1, beginning in 2014, the team was really more exploring what is systems change, how can we work, where should we work. In phase 2, our Healthy Families South Auckland TSI team really focused and honed in on 3 areas of work to prototype systems change. And then building on these, we are now looking to how can we amplify the learnings. We are understanding more how to shift food systems, council systems, active movement systems, and how do we increase our reach. So I guess in terms of a team of 4, we are looking to, through collective action to reach much further. The last and probably most important reason for this approach is that it aligns very well to our existing strengths, relationships, and mandate in our team. So we have mandate from being in both the Southern Initiative and Healthy Families to take a whānau-centred systems change approach. We also really took stock of our relationships and strengths. So while we may each personally have relationships with our South Auckland community and whānau, building up a lot of these community relationships from scratch often took a lot more time and effort than we could really afford. And so looking deeper, we saw a lot of our existing relationships with Auckland Council colleagues, other organisational colleagues, where they already had those community relationships developed and sustained, maintained as part of their main working activity. So for us, instead of a team of 4 spending our time working on a few community groups, we have chosen to work with practitioners so that we can then access all of their community networks and groups that they work with to increase our reach. So getting into the how of how we do practitioner-centered approach to collective action, I'd like to acknowledge that there's a lot of best practices out there. One that we have used to inform our collective action work is from the FSG and the Collective Impact Forum, where they talk about collective action facilitating requires some core elements with a common agenda, shared measurement, mutually reinforcing activities, continuous communications, and backbone support to keep it going. Often you are dealing with a lot of different partners, stakeholders, organisations who don't really have a strong mandate to work together. It's not in their KPIs, it's not in their contracts. It is often goodwill and I don't know, a hope for better outcomes together, hey? And so we really saw our role being in this backbone support. Again, there are many ways to think of a backbone support, and for us, we really like this sort of definition where there are clear tasks and roles around guiding vision strategy, advancing policy, mobilizing funding, resource, and building community engagement, etc. So in this resource, they have given sort of an example of what a backbone structure could look like. It can be as simple or as complicated and as wide as you like. But so for today, I just want to sort of show you in real terms how we've taken that backbone approach in our own work. So the first example that I'd like to talk about is backboning collective action within our Auckland Council colleagues. So the main 3 elements of how we have been doing this, we have many different collective action initiatives going on in our Auckland Council collective colleagues. For example, we are working with the local boards to develop their own good food roadmap. We are backboning a kai kōrero community of practice where teams right across Auckland Council are working together on how we can support better food resilience, security, sovereignty in our communities. Some key elements that have been coming up is that we need to demonstrate value to our colleagues about collective action. We need to disrupt the power dynamics that are holding collective action from naturally occur, and also the hierarchical nature of a lot of our teams. And we need to really build some collaborative infrastructure. These have been the three main things that we have been focusing on when working with our Auckland Council colleagues. So going into a little bit more specific about what those elements mean, I'm going to use the case study of Kia ora te whānau, which has been led by my colleagues, Winnie Hauraki and Ataro Pofare Ellis. So in this Kia ora te whānau project, we are trying to build collective action amongst our libraries, leisure centres, connected community staff. We have these wonderful hubs where communities can come and read a book, connect with social other people, and do some physical activity. But there has never been an overarching collective movement towards how do we really fully support the well-being overall hauora of the communities who come to these facilities. So this was a project on how do we develop the shared common agenda and movement going forward. Something that we really had to do, my colleagues had to do, was to demonstrate the value of whānau wellbeing in the context of our colleagues' works and KPIs. Those of you who may be familiar with Auckland Council may also be very familiar with a lot of very strict revenue aligned KPIs. You know, for example, a lot of our leisure centres have to have KPIs around how much revenue they're generating through subscriptions, memberships, activities, all that stuff. And this can be often very difficult in terms of balancing with well-being outcomes. Winnie Hauraki had already previously prototyped similar work in healthy environment approach. So she was able to demonstrate the value and impact from working in a collective well-being focused way for these teams to buy in. In terms of disrupting power dynamics, there was a really big focus on creating safe space for staff. In terms of letting them feel safe to really express their true feelings, because often a lot of our collective action towards the well-being systems change is disrupting. This is just how we always do it. And so to be able to create that safe space for staff to be like, you can tell us how it is done and why is it not working for you and the communities that you serve. Then we build this trust by amplifying their staff voice to management and leadership and facilitating changes that actually make staff realize that their voice is very important in this process as well. Another part of this working with Auckland Council colleagues in collective action is finding common ground between teams. So much like many external organisations, we have silos within Auckland Council where different teams may think that they're working towards the same outcomes, but are often actually taking very different philosophical mental model approaches to it. So going again back to Kia ora te whānau, leisure centres versus libraries, there were some tensions between revenue-focused ways of running a centre versus participation and community-centred, aspiration-centred ways of working in the centre. So having to find us common ground. And then building collaborative infrastructure. So something that Winnie and Ataro took as a first step was to develop a co-lead structure. This is not a collective action movement led by Healthy Families South Auckland. It is multiple teams have ownership over this. We are running this collective movement together, and we are also coordinating regular workshops and trainings together and facilitating community capability building, both in the co-lead, because often these teams, they haven't been supported to do design thinking, to do innovative thinking. And this is an important part of not setting them up to fail and making them feel like this is not for them, because this is for them. So in terms of where Kia ora te whānau collective action and responsibility is up to today, they have made leaps and bounds in my eyes. They have really developed a lot of whanangatanga and trust amongst all the teams who have been involved in the process. There has been a marked increase in attendances and workshops. In the beginning, people were like, I'll come just to see what's happening, but this is not really my job, to people being very eager and wanting to lead sessions and really bring in their own experiences now. into the development of the common agenda, goals, vision. So I think at this stage, I'm not sure if Winnie's on this session or not, and she wants to talk about it, but they have built a lot of capability in the team to think more whānau-centred co-design thinking, systems change thinking. And I think they've developed some PO that they're going to be taking forward as the PO of the approach overall for these hubs. The second case study that I'd like to talk about is our Healthy Families New Zealand colleagues. So we have about 11 sites across New Zealand who are all broadly working towards supporting the hauora of our communities through different ways of systems change and collective impact. We have found that in the space of food systems particularly, there is an opportunity for our team to bring out insights and learnings from what we've been doing in our local South Auckland food systems and sharing it with other colleagues in their own sites. So in terms of the main elements of this backbone and collective action, the main elements have been to demonstrate value again of why collective action in this space is useful for our Healthy Families New Zealand colleagues, support the testing and learning in individual sites so that they are understanding more of their approach, and then also to coordinate shared learning so there is more of a community of practice within our colleagues. So I'm going to talk about a specific case study. So this is led by my colleague Julio Bin, who has been working with various sites across Healthy Families New Zealand with the Good Food Roadmap. So I think I saw Stella and Paul earlier. So he has been working with the Far North teams, Invercargill, Wanganui, Ruapehu Rangatiki, and East Cape. And in terms of his approach to supporting this collective action building emerging in the food system space amongst our Healthy Families colleagues, he's really taken to demonstrating the value and reframing the value of Good Food Roadmap for each site. Each site has a different what's in it for them to use this approach. And I think most of it has been to be a really great base platform or approach to really discussing what does each local community need in a good food system. And he's able to demonstrate value and impact from his previous prototyping work at the Papatoetoe Food Hub, in our local board areas, and various community groups in South Auckland. He's been very available during all the different phases of these different sites, being available during planning, testing, evaluating, both online and in person as well, as needed or required by different sites. And I think together, him and our colleagues have initiated a shared learning space to really support each other and develop some collective leadership. I was just talking to him this week and he's saying that, you know, he was sick last week and there was meant to be a meeting going forward with this collective learning sharing group. And he was really happy that someone else was able to pick it up. You know, it's not just us leading backbone individually anymore, it's the collective movement. So that is great. And in terms of where the Good Food Roadmap work has been with Julio, so he has supported so there's been really great stuff to see. Stella has already presented on her work in Invercargill with creating a Good Food Roadmap from Motuhiko. Tom and Dave has been working a lot in the Kaiora Wanganui Kai collective space as well. And Paul up in Whanau and East Cape. My third case study of how we've been doing practitioner-centred collective action is with some of our key system partners. So this is meaning external organisations who we see as really important partners to shift our systems for the well-being of our communities. So we are working with a range of them, for example, the Cook Island Development Agency New Zealand, who you've seen this photo, and various others. In terms of health organisations, central government organisation partners, and local government partners too. The three elements of our approach with these key system partners has been, again, to demonstrate value, learning through doing, in facilitating sustainability. So I'm going to be using a case study of my work in the Wellbeing and Cleaning Industry Collective Action. I think I saw Rhonda coming in before, and she is a part of this from Auckland Regional Public Health Service. So in this example, the main aim for us to create collective action or responsibility came from a talk between me, Zainal, and Tapu, who are from Happy Families Waitakere and Happy Families South Auckland collective side, on how could we do a regional approach to workplace wellbeing in Auckland. And I had known that my colleagues in Auckland Regional Public Health Service have been doing a workplace wellbeing project with cleaners, being highlighted, their wellbeing being very highlighted during the COVID pandemic particularly. And we saw an opportunity to build the capability in our Auckland Regional Public Health Service partners for them to create a collective impact action with the cleaning industry. So in terms of what we did, we had to demonstrate the value of collective action and systems thinking for Auckland Regional Public Health Service. For those of you who may have experience working in traditional central government departments or the health system, you'll know that there can be a strong culture of this is how we've always done it, and being risk averse. There are levels of approval and planning and consideration that needs to be done. And we had to take all those values into consideration to help Rhonda and Jill, our colleagues at us, frame up to their leadership and management about why is collective action and systems thinking a viable or valuable way for them to work in. So I know Tapu and I shared our tools, learnings and insights from our previous work in the co-design systems change wellbeing spaces to support our arts colleagues. A main part of this approach was to support us learning through doing. It's one thing to sit in seminars, webinars, and learn about how do you facilitate collective action. Another thing is to actually be guided and learn it through hands-on experience. So Tapu, Zainal, and I held the initial responsibility for capability building of Jill and Rhonda as partners for them to support the cleaning industry collective. We also modeled how you build collective action by actually just building collective action with the cleaning industry. So working on whanaungatanga, working on shared vision and goals, and modeling how all these things can be done. Something that really struck out for me was the importance of reflective sessions back with Jill and Rhonda to actually reinforce what are we learning and why are we doing it? How are we doing it? I think we often take for granted that we just do, we just work, but when trying to support our system partners in creating collective action and responsibility themselves with their own stakeholders, it's really important to point things out like, hey, we're building really great whanaungatanga and in our collective, I'm seeing that people are talking to each other more easily, people are laughing together, they're talking without us having to prompt them to talk. And these are things that we really needed to reinforce to Jill and Rhonda because they had no experience before, and there are traditional measures of success, which is like from a central government health system point of view, which is how many people came, how many projects are on their way, what KPIs, milestones are being reached, and it can be very quantitative. Whereas if we took more of a look at the collective community building that is happening, this is really great. This is not wasted time. We're not making progress just because we don't have any shared goals at the moment, because we do need to build this initial whanaungatanga and sense of trust and community. So just being very mindful of being explicit and pointing out all these what's, whys, and how's for them. And then the third part of what we were doing between Zainal, Tapu, and myself with Jill and Rhonda was to really work on developing the confidence and the capability of Jill and Rhonda to sustain this collective impact by themselves as we in Healthy Family Sites will be stepping back in terms of ownership of the collective impact building, action building. So we needed to have some shared expectations of the transition of ownership. This is a little bit rocky in real life due to COVID and the redeployment of Jill and Rhonda back into COVID activities at us. So for some time being, Final and I had to step a bit more forward and lead the collective, the cleaning collective for some time. But that is, I think, also a big part of working with external partners is understanding their own pressures. And it's not about just giving them a guide or a tool or, hey, this is how we did it, so why don't you go and do it yourself? We actually have to be in there making sure that they are capable and have the capability at the level that they want before we start stepping back. And so in terms of where we're at with this piece of collective action work, we have developed a really wonderful steering group that is going to help drive the collective action within the cleaning industry group. They're enthusiastic and, maybe not a coincidence that they're all wahine toa, but its passion there is really great and driving. And we are seeing that the cleaning collective themselves are also seeing the value of being part of this collective. At the beginning, this has been a drastic difference in terms of the first session when people didn't even want to really talk about what they meant by well-being. There was such a sense of competitiveness in this commercial industry that people were scared that if they helped someone else be better at well-being in their own company, then that could be a competitive edge that was taken away from their own company. And so we've gone from this very untrusting, unsure dynamic to people saying that, hey, I really love being part of this collective. I can see the power of storytelling collectivism, having better insights into other parts of the landscape. Better access to industry gossip is hilarious. But yeah, just people are seeing the value. And we, to this date, we have developed some shared goals, visions, and milestones with the steering group that we will be bringing back to the working group, the wider group. The last case study that I wanted to touch on in terms of building collective action is something that is quite near to my heart, and that is building collective responsibility and action for systems change in our future colleagues. So much of the challenges that I have kind of outlined in the past three examples of different stakeholders, I think could be nipped at the bud if we really focus on our future colleagues who are training, developing, coming through the workforce. Because if we can get them thinking that that collectivism is the norm, then we're going to have a lot of the hard work cut out for us. It's we are just going to naturally be at a level starting point where they're like, yeah, of course we collaborate. How do we? When can we collaborate? So for our team, we have been really focusing on working with particularly university partners at AUT and the Auckland University, and also a little bit at Victoria University, Wellington. Some of the main ways that we have been working to build this collective responsibility action in our future colleagues is by demonstrating value of collective action systems thinking, working at all levels, not just thinking about the students, but also the staff, and maintaining connections. So using an example of my working with the University of Auckland, in particular with the School of Population Health and the dietetics programs, something that I've found has been really important is to reframe the value of systems thinking and the roles that the university students and staff play in systems change. Again, it can be really theoretical, very abstract when you're in those spaces. It's systems change doesn't seem real or important. And it's really important that we keep demonstrating and the value that they will play as future practitioners in our workforce. For the staff, I have found that the main focus needs to be in capability building for strengths-based systems change thinking and research and teaching. So what this means is I think there is a lot of potential for our academia thinking to be a bit more systems thinking, a bit more strengths-based, not just always deficit thinking, not always problem-based. And I have seen a collective movement building within just the staff that I've been working with at the School of Population Health and at NIHI in re-examining how they frame things such as nutrition, always reframing, always leading articles or research with obesity is the #1 problem in New Zealand, threatening Māori and Pacifica health. And why? Why is that always the leading frame? And how inspiring is it? And what does success look like in that frame? That you've decreased obesity levels? Where's the well-being of our communities? And I can really start seeing this movement happening there. In terms of students, it's harder to measure their collective, the impact on their collective thinking and moving because they're everywhere, right? But the main focus here is to support them to see their value and role in system change as future practitioners, that what they're learning is not just to be rote learned for exams, but this is actually some value-based stuff that they should be bringing out to their future working careers and approaches. I found that maintaining connections has been really useful in this sort of group or stakeholder and building this collective action, creating champions and staff and students. Initially, I sort of was invited to do 1 lecture a year, sort of just because of the work that I was doing. I wasn't really personally invited. It was just that I was working on a project that they wanted to hear about. And then over time, I persisted in building those relationships with the lecturers, with the staff, and they kept inviting me, and they kept also recommending me to other lecturers and other staff, and being able to build up that network of who I was reaching, So I've gone from just the public health nutrition paper to dietetics, to School of Business, to design, to it can keep spreading. And the champions that I am starting to really value and appreciate in the University of Auckland has been, amazing in allowing me access to even staff groups like NIHI, who's the National Innovation Health Institute, researchers, and influence how they are researching, because a lot of their research informs the practice of public health. In terms of how it's going, these are just 2 examples of what I've been seeing. So Kimi Tanare and I was invited to present at NIHI around inserting to normal deficit discourse in population health research, and that has led to many other researchers wanting to learn more about this and creating a movement within their own faculty about, how do we not frame everything so deficit-wise? The slide on the right is actually a slide from some medical students who did a population health placement, and I was working with them on, an idea for them on how they can improve population health nutrition. And they really took the collective impact model and ran with it. And that was really cool to see, because I think, a lot of what is still taught in our public health, non-public health places around nutrition, public health can be, I'll just teach people how to eat healthier. That's what we need. And it's really cool to see this sort of wider systems thinking, collective impact thinking spreading. Cool. So that was a quick whistle-stop tour of the 4 ways that we've been doing practitioner-centered collective action. So I just want to now wrap up with some key learnings. And I thought I would use the Hotu Waka design way of thinking that was created by my colleagues in the Southern Initiative in the Co-Design Lab for Mata, Ela, and Matua Rereata. So this is based on an Indigenous navigational journey, and I present the learnings in this frame because I don't want it by any means come across that our team knows everything about our approach. We are also on our own learning journey, and we'll probably circle back a few times as well, where we think we've reached, a good way of doing something, and then I don't know, something will happen, and we'll be like, okay, back to whakarite. Let's get the right people on board. So in terms of learning for whakarite, this is the preparation stage. Who is our team? You know, what is our capabilities? I think a key learning was to really make sure that how our approach aligned with our strengths, relationships, and mandates. You know, I think there are some different pulls and tensions of let's have some quick wins, let's work directly with community, let's really, you know, do some work that can feel meaningful and I can see the people who we actually work with. And I think that was for a lot of teams, but for our in particular team, we really needed to be frank with what can we do? What are our relationship limitations? What are our strengths? And it was in a practitioner-focused approach as opposed to directly whānau-centered approach. We have had to do a lot of training ourselves to facilitate on how to facilitate collective action for systems change. This is not a very widely established practice, particularly in our spaces of South Auckland, local government, Haurora, systems change. There are many resources and trainings overseas, but we are still seeing that we need to adapt them to our own local settings within an indigenous framework. And yeah, so it's a continue training and updating. Something that was also really important was that we had support from our leadership to take this approach. This is a approach that takes a lot of resources and a lot of time and a lot of like, why are you in there with the team doing this work? Why don't you just tell them what to do and they can go away and do it? Why don't you just give them a guide, you know? And we needed that leadership support that, yeah, go in, commit, build the relationships, build the trust, and actually understand what is happening to be able to create that collective action properly. In terms of venturing into the unknown and the te rapunga stage, I think some key learnings there was that we really needed to have some testing and learning mental models because this is a new way of working for us. We weren't really sure what it could look like. And so something that really helped us was to have the Nipo Taniwha process and a great capability coach in the form of Baruch Jacobs, who supported us in doing reflective learning of what we were seeing, trying, testing. Is it working? Why is it not working? And also building our emotional capability up as our own individual members of the team to be able to understand how we're feeling about our work and being honest with each other. In terms of going forward and citing the tohu that is like, oh yeah, maybe we're on the right track with our collective action approach and really thinking more and deeper about the science, the tohu. I think the key learning there is that we're learning so much. We keep learning that it's so important to reframe and demonstrate the value for each new group in their own specific way. It's not enough to be like, well, it worked for this group, so why don't you take it on? Because it doesn't make sense to each group. So for example, how we framed up collective action for us in a health system risk averse way was not going to work for a revenue driven leisure team in Auckland Council. We had to find each hook into why would they care about well-being, why would they care about collective action, and that took a lot of refining and testing and trying. In terms of each group having unique needs for support and approach, so you may have seen when I was talking, we're not all super hands-on because each group has different needs. So for our Healthy Families teams, they already had a lot of background in systems thinking and a lot of background in well-being and some background in community, in facilitating collective action. The support that they needed, therefore, was for us to just create a space for them to share the learnings about how they were working with the Good Food Roadmap and some ideas on what that could practically look like in their own sites. Whereas for Auckland Council, we were really needing to dismantle, disrupt, and rebuild some collaborative infrastructure and culture within the teams, which is a lot more intensive and commitment heavy. We also had to be I think the key learning is that we have to be really purposeful in facilitating collective action. I keep saying that, we can't just come in and say, here you go, here's some great ideas, why don't you do it? We actually have to prove our integrity, that we will say what we do, that we believe in what we're saying, and also thinking about how can we really be a backbone for this collective action instead of just, well, I guess, if we just slap together a few meeting calendar invites, people will just naturally talk. There's an art to it, and it goes back to the continual updating and training. So I don't think we're by any means really near Te Rawenga, which is sort of the end goal or the celebration of, that we have great practitioner-centered collective action. But I think there's still some learnings towards that end. I think clear learning has been that we need a way to truly capture and measure progress in the collective action. Just the number of people who turn out for a meeting is not a true measure of that progress. True measure is like people talking to each other on the side because they are building that sense of whanangatanga, or that people are referring us to other people that they think could really appreciate and benefit from our backboning of the collective action there as well. It's how do we capture all these different ways of knowing that we're on the right track. Another learning is I'm seeing a lot of emerging ripples from our collective action. So they're all at different stages, but they're all definitely helping us sort of move in the bigger same direction. And they have both been unexpected and expected. Unexpected in the sense that some people that we thought would be really difficult to get on board for our collective action has just jumped right on. And other people that you would think might be natural allies, and of course they would want, because they're working in community well-being centered work, of course they would want to jump on board, but actually they have been some of the hardest people, particularly in some of those teams where it's just always how it's done. So in terms of the unexpected and expected, it's, I guess, buy-in is not guaranteed. So that is something that's been really key to keep on. And again, another learning here is just that we need to keep learning, reflecting, and adapting. Everything that I'm talking to you about today, we might have new learnings again in 6 months' time as we keep going and learning. So this is a really exciting process for us, and yeah, it's a really cool journey that we're gonna keep going on. So that's it for me. I just wanted to acknowledge because we're talking about collective action today, all the people that have been part of my talk today. It can be really cool. Sometimes I think when you're working in the day-to-day, you're like, oh, what am I actually doing? What difference am I doing? What progress am I doing? And I don't know, this sort of preparing for the session today was kind of cool for me and my team as well, just to really look back and be like, yeah, we are actually building collective action. We are building this collective movement of people towards well-being. And it's really cool that we are able to do this as a very small team of 4. And hopefully by talking to you today that you can spread this out too. But yeah, thank you so much. And should I stop sharing?
Kia ora, Jacqui. Thank you so much for such an insightful and in-depth presentation. And I enjoyed how you began with the systems change approach and then kind of drilled down into those real-time case studies and how we put that systems change approach in action. I also, was really intrigued by the future colleagues work and space that you've been working in. So I'm keen to hear a bit more about that at another time. But we also had a question from Kathy in the chat just on that future colleagues space and the work that you're doing with them to build their capability around what systems change looks like. And the question was, how do you evaluate that work in that space?
Yeah, I guess this is something that I alluded to in my sort of key learnings at the end, which is it is hard to have build up that measurement tracking system about what is progress. Something that I have been doing for myself is, so I get internships with the students from the courses that I do lectures on, and I can sort of have conversations with them, just tracking for myself our conversations and how we talk about systems change, wellbeing, whole water. At the beginning, they're usually very, very individual focused. The ideas are usually how do we help people? How do we give them resources, information? And at the end, it's really cool when the ideas or the reflections tend to be more like, okay, how the partners or the relationships that I will need to build, in order to actually create this change. I think something that I would like to be more intentional about measuring that, evaluating that, working with the students, is just maybe do some, I don't know, through their progress in the other papers, are we seeing the concepts of systems change, well-being, whole water, collective action coming through on the other assignments and discussions? This is going to be probably necessary for me to build a lot of relationships with a lot more of their lecturers and other staff. But and I also do some marking of theses, for example, and it's I can tracking in different ways. But I'd love to hear your ideas, Kathy. And I mean, I know that other people are also working in these spaces, so maybe we can have some shared evaluation tracking sessions. I don't have to create this by myself. I'm sure someone much smarter is out there doing it.
Yeah, I think I was interested because I also go in and do lectures in West Auckland and from a healthy families perspective, but I really liked your point about the reflecting on the shift of students that come on placement. That's one really cool measure, and we've started to talk about how do we record the stories of the students' work that they did while they were there, because that's another way of sharing those mindset shifts. But also I wonder if there's something that we could do in general and this is maybe a wider healthy families conversation around what if there were shifts in the assessments that were in the courses where students actually had to incorporate that into their work. That would be like a systemic change that we can see happening and things like that. So it just really got me thinking. So I'd be keen to talk to you more about it later.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Kathy. And yeah, I've actually already tracked a little bit about the assessment and also like the tutorial and lecture changes. It used to be that I would come in and talk about healthy families as sort of a offhand, end of the semester like interest session. And now in the third year population health nutrition paper, Sally Mackay at Auckland University has put a tutorial about systems change and food systems, building on what I've been talking about in my talk. And the assessments are moving away from just how do we do healthy food policies? It's just fine, but where's the systems change thinking in that,
and how do we apply that design thinking, right?
Yeah.
But so I think the insights from the university students and just seeing their kind of shift in their mindset is an outcome in itself. I'm just checking the chat. Are there any other questions from our audience while we've got Jacqui here today?
Kia ora, and kia ora koutou, and kia ora Jacqui. Thank you so much for your for sharing all your learnings today. My name is Aaliyah Bloom. I work over at ACC in injury prevention with a focus on sexual violence prevention. So this was really interesting for me, and I've been hearing a lot about the work that Healthy Families has been doing around the motu, so this has been a great opportunity to learn. Thank you. I had a question just going back to the work that you were talking about with cleaners, because you talked a lot about kind of advocacy and power dynamics and sort of, managers and staff and all of that kind of stuff, and a lot of that sounds like kind of leaning in towards like sort of union advocacy work. And I was just wondering, like, how you kind of, or were there opportunities to kind of draw in on kind of already existing kind of advocacy efforts, I guess, in order to kind of support cleaners to have more autonomy over their well-being in the workplace? I'm trying to, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, Rhonda's actually here if she wants to add anything after I talk, but Rhonda and Jill very mindfully included a wide variety of people in the cleaning industry group, including unions. So we definitely have had their strong voice come through into the development of the insights and the common agenda. Cleaner voice has been one of the main I think I think it goes through all of our bold goals that we've been developing so far. You know, how do we actually make sure that the cleaner voice is centered, centering all our work and decision making, and it has been really difficult to actually have cleaners come along to these cleaning collective meetings and workshops just because of the nature of their own work and being paid for their time. But yeah, it's funny because in this cleaning collective we have unions, but we also have customers and we also have government departments who are often the main targets of the unions. So there's been a little bit of some creative challenges in balancing, but I think
I mean, from a systems approach, it's really great to have all those different levels and voices in the space if they're coming to these hui, you know, open-handed and really committed to sort of the po that you've put down. So
I mean, Rhonda might want to talk more, but I know that she and Jill had just met with the union as well recently, and they're very supportive of this work.
Thank you. A million more questions, but hopefully through ACC we'll be reaching out to you as well. So
thank you.
Yeah, kia ora, Jacqui. Sorry if I can just chip in there. I'm also really keen to, in the evaluation space, maybe do some sort of insights gathering around how you work with people like us and getting all sides of it, from you doing the capability building of us and us learning from you. There'd be so many wonderful insights, I'm sure, from all your different people that you build capacity in, and I'm sure Jill and I would love to be part of that if you do decide to go that way. Kia ora for your presentation. Awesome.
Kia ora, Rhonda. Thank you, and it definitely, would love to deep dive more into the partners that we have been working with for sure.
Thank you. Are there any further questions before we wrap up? If you do, once you've kind of left the presentation and done some reflection, if you do have any questions, then I'm sure Jacqui would be more than happy to be approached to answer any further questions you do have. So I'll just thank Jacqui again for such a great presentation. It sparked a lot of thinking for myself and I'm sure others who have joined us today. And just a reminder that our presentations are recorded, and so they'll be up on our website if you did want to share it with any of your colleagues or your system partners to give them an insight into the South Auckland approach and the wider Healthy Families NZ approach to systems change. So thank you, Jacqui, and thank you all for joining us today. And I'll just close our webinar today with a karakia. Kia tau, kia tātou katoa, te atawhai o te tātou ariki, a ihu karaiti, me te aroha o te atua, me te whiwhinga tahitanga, ki te wairua tapu, aki aki, amine.